And we are live. Welcome to the Financial Advocacy Podcast. We are your Wolf of Wall Street hosts here today. You guys are such clowns right before the show starts. But anyway, I am David Kinder, registered financial consultant, charter life underwriter. We're here with my co-hosts Kurt Gibbs and Mike Moffitt. And it's strange that we're kind of laughing just because we had this great joke right beforehand. But we're going to be talking about the fears these are real retiree concerns. So it's so irreverent that we were laughing right beforehand, guys. I swear we did not set up the right tone, but that's okay. We're going to talk about the real fears and concerns that retirees and pre-retirees have, especially those vital years right before they pull the trigger and say, I'm finally going to retire. Guys, give me some of your thoughts when we were preparing for this thing.
Well, I'll kind of start things off with some things that I think I hear from, people that have those concerns that we're going to touch on is that so many people, I think, wait, until the 12th hour or whatever to really start thinking about things that they do have a fear factor about when it comes to retirement or their pre-retirement years, whatever age that is for each individual. But, just recently, sat down with a 55-year-old female that it's just now hitting home to her that she should be doing more, or she should be doing something that's got a tax advantage to it, because she understands the fact that taxes continually are headed up, and inflation is doing what it's doing. So it becomes, I think there's even more fear now than there was, say, 10 years ago about how to plan and how to plan properly for, an optimal retirement. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into really when you talk serious about someone's money with them, about pre-retirement and retirement, that the questions that need to be answered.
What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I think a lot of this came out of the discussion that the three of us were having kind of throughout the week about sequence of returns risk and how it is a lot different during the accumulation side when you're working and building up your retirement account versus on the other side of the mountain, on the distribution side, where now you're spending all of everything that you've saved because you're in theory no longer working. And so the sequence of returns risk is much greater because, obviously losses during the distribution side in retirement affect the account much greater than they do on the accumulation side if you have time to recover, from a downturn in the market. So I think we're going to get into that probably in a little more detail and kind of touch on a few different things. But, that's kind of where the whole things stem from of this episode is talking about how that can affect your portfolio more so in retirement in the distribution side, even than, on the accumulation side where you're building the account.
Yeah, and Kurt, one of the things you mentioned is it seems like some people, they wait until the last possible second to finally say, I'm going to retire now. And they had no plan before. They kept doing what their HR department told them to do. Mm-hmm. So they're stocking their money to their 401k, may or may not be paying attention to the allocation within it. Who knows? It had different types of people with that. But like when I was at a credit union, the credit union, and most people don't necessarily know this, but credit unions work with, they call them SEG groups, special employer groups. And right. They focus on usually on a specific type of occupation. If not, then there's a specific geography that you have to live, work, or worship in a certain area. And the credit union I was part of, we worked primarily with AT&T and Verizon retirees. And one thing that was rather common with them was that they would announce what they would call retirement buyouts, right? And they would say, you know what, we're going to give you a special bonus to your retirement plans, but you have to decide to retire by this date to get this bonus to be credited to your account. And they come into the credit union and say, I don't know if I should do this or not. I mean, it's kind of too late to kind of figure out your plan when they finally say, here, we're going to give you extra money. Should you take it or not? Where was your planning before? And unfortunately, we can't say, well, where were you 5 years ago? We should have been planning well in advance for this. Planning is an ongoing process. It's kind of like our health. And the easier way to think of it is more like at least the dentist has you come in at least twice a year. at least according to their recommendations. People should be seeing their advisors at least, especially when the closer they get to those retirement ages, and there's specific years, years of our ages, whatever that's called. I can't talk, but there's specific ages where we really should be figuring out, should we be doing something based on our age? So, for example, age 55, are you still employed or not? Do you have an old 401k that if you left at the age of 55 or later that you can tap into without paying a penalty? Age 59 and a half, now you can get access to your money without paying penalties. And there's other facets that can be coordinated based on your age, because there's age-related decisions that can be made. And whether we could coordinate that. Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, and to kind of echo something that you kind of mentioned there, the age-based thing. So many plans out there, especially from the qualified plan point of view, it's kind of a because I see this from people that are employed that have 401ks, it's almost like they think it's a set it and forget it type plan, where that it needs no rebalancing. It doesn't need to be looked at, very frequently, and that they just feel like the market's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. They have this myth, and there's an argument, but well, I'm buying, when the market's down today, I'm buying low, I'm buying cheap. Well, no, you can't. First of all, you can't buy the S&P, and that gets way into the weeds and something we won't touch on. But you cannot directly buy the S&P index, and that's a big, kind of misconception, I think, for the average client out there that's contributing to qualified plans about how these things work, which leads right back into what we're kind of all about, is the educational side of it. Talk about your situation, and the biggest thing for your client, I think, is they have got to develop a list of core questions that they need answers to, because everyone's situation is different. And it doesn't make sense to contribute 20% to your 401k plan if you've got other things that are taken away from what's going into that plan. You almost can't feed two sources at once in certain situations. So just a lot of variables with how you allocate your funds from a pre-retirement era, and age to right up into the last 5 years, or whatever time frame you're looking at.
Yeah.
You gave me an idea for a project, Kurt. We are going to create, and I don't know when we're going to do this, we are going to create a list, a one-page list of questions that every listener should take to their current advisor and ask these questions, and make sure that you are comfortable with the answers that they give you. And obviously, we're going to have a little bit of a bias towards what we believe.
We will.
At the same time, these are great questions that should be asked, and ask them proactively before you need to make your bigger retirement decisions, like pulling the trigger of let's get these rollovers done.
But recently, yeah, we do. And recently, just from talking with some people, you guys know, I socialize very easy, I think, with most people about anything. And the thing I see most recently, I think, with many folks, is there's two things, two questions or two concerns. And one is time. They realize that their time has all of a sudden got compressed. The kids are grown. They maybe borrowed from a 401k to fund a child's college, which, we all know we have, pros and cons on all those type things that you can do, what little bit you can do with your 401k while you're still working. But the correlation between time and taxation, I think, right now is two key factors that people, once they turn 55, let's say, have really, that I speak with and talk with, are really concerned about. They just don't. Do I have enough time to, the strategy that we talk so much about? Do I have time to make that plan work? Am I better off just maximizing my 401k and rolling the dice, so to speak, and letting things fall where they may? But the best time to plan is right now. It's not, it's not waiting, 5 more years and just hoping for the best.
Yeah.
We know that was a Chinese proverb that, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now.
Yeah.
Very true. And I don't care who you're working with. Just get in their office, get on a Zoom call, whatever it is, get a checkup. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So a couple things. So I think, one, that you accidentally made a good comparison there with the dentist, because you can generally tell who goes to the dentist often and those that don't. Kind of like those who visit with a retirement, planner or check on their finances regularly. The health of your mouth and teeth is going to look a lot like the health of your retirement assets if you don't focus and plan on that stuff at least once or twice a year, right? So, I mean, if you don't go to the dentist in 10 years, your teeth are probably going to be rotting and falling out of your mouth. Just like if you don't, plan for your retirement over 10, 15 years, you're going to be way behind and have less assets in retirement. And as far as the other thing goes, I think we actually do have in our group something like that you were talking about with the questions to ask your financial advisor. I think I'll have to find it, but I think we already do. If not, we can easily create one.
Well, and it's
we'll
easy
to create one. Yeah.
It's easy. It's easy to, so many people that I ask this question is retirement gets upon them and they just think that they're going to retire with what they have and that's the best they could do. And it's really not the case. I mean, I don't know what the numbers would be, percentages or whatever, but I think so many people retire with a suboptimal, as kind of Tom Hegna puts it, a suboptimal retirement simply because they don't look at all the aspects of what they could do along the way that can minimize their taxes, and maximize their take home income, if you will. And it's something that you just need to put a lot more thought into it and take some of these fears off the table before retirement. That's something you should really, I think, people that are really, in that early time frame of established with a good job and maybe good benefits. And I know they have families and things like that, but you can systematically, not really budget. I don't like the word budget, but you can systematically save and put money in places that are optimal at the time that will be, really optimal really optimized once you get out to retirement. If you just be a little proactive.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a correlation for what Mike said regarding seeing the dentist. Do you want a wooden retirement or do you want a natural enamel retirement? I don't know how to phrase that, but that was what I was thinking of. I'm like, you get those wooden teeth in there, that ain't going to work. But
do you want a George Washington retirement or
we
have Sensodyne. Okay.
Yeah, right. And the other thing, so much talk all the time, is about, from the investment side of things about, maximize, take advantage of the Roth and do things. I'm not against Roth IRAs at all, but there's a limit to that. And if you have the ability to exceed those Roth limits, I mean, we obviously know what the answer to that is. And so many people think, well, I'll just do the Roth now on, and that'll get me where I want to be. But if it's inside wrapped inside those mutual funds and those portfolios which are really poorly managed, if you even want to call managed, I kind of get bent out of shape on everything you see about the Morningstar reports and how they, it's a computer cookie cutter program that's been around forever. And it's just a different spin on things, and advisors, they use it, consistently, and it's all about that pile of money for them. It's not about that exit strategy. And that's where the gold is. It's on the exit strategy.
So going back, because one of the things that you said there, Kurt, was that some people, they just think the market's going to go up and they're going to go down. And that's true. And that's true because that's investment advice, but it's not necessarily good retirement advice, because the market could go down 20% the day of you wanted to retire. And that's the biggest wake-up call. See, up until 2008, the market ebbed and flowed, usually about 10% here and there. Not a huge deal. It wasn't that big of a deal for retirement planning. But as soon as 2008 happened, it was 50% in 2 months. That was a free fall. And it makes me so afraid for other people that you could be a victim of the market. And I'm going to share, I'm not set up for that particular slide. Let me fast forward to that slide because I did some analysis on some of this stuff. Let me show this one. And this was one of the funds. Well, we didn't do a complete analysis on this, but from 2000 to the end of 2007, this capital income, American Funds Capital Income Builder, this is a great fund. And I loved offering this one because it was reasonably smooth with decent gains. And Mike, your dog is really sounding the alarm here for us. But decently smooth, decent gains, not a whole lot of volatility. But that was at the end of 2007. Now, let me show you 2008. Bam! I mean, that was a free fall through the end of that year. And just looking at this, assuming you didn't take anything back out, it took about 4.5 years to get back to where it was. And, obviously it's not the investment advisor's fault that the market crashed. It's not like, the retail advisors did anything on this, but the fact is that you could have to delay your retirement up to, 5 years if we had another big market correction like this. Now the next slides, I've got another fund, same company, different one. This is an international fund, Capital World Growth and Income, a little more volatile from 2000, 2007 than the other one. But then it also fell a little bit more. And this one took about 5.5 years to get back to where you were. And when I think of, the timing of when someone wants to retire, which is a life cycle decision, but the market is not necessarily going to conform to you, it can really play and make a huge impact. I mean, one of the things that we often say is that the day that you retire has more of an impact than just about anything else you choose.
Well, and another thing is too, and we've talked about it numerous times. It's mentioned, obviously a lot in the group is, where your money's at is more important than what it earns, and it's so true. It's so true, and the volatility that this goes along with, really, and with those American funds, which is overall a very conservative portfolio of mutual funds, compared to the broader market of funds that are available out there. But it's just too many people are just not doing enough due diligence on their own homework to give themselves an opportunity to have that better than just whatever the market delivers in retirement for retirement funds. It's just if you're passionate about what you do, like we are, you really want people, to start the questions and start rattling their brain a little bit more about, asking questions. I have so many people that will ask me, well, how much money do I need to retire? Well, you really can't answer that question because, they just think they've turned 65 or they've turned 67. They even have friends that have lived maybe 7 or 8 years past that, and they get to and pass away, and they're thinking, that could be me. I'm going to go ahead and retire, and then they find out that they don't have things in place to give themselves that optimal retirement with the funds they have, simply because maybe they didn't pay attention to their statement for 10 years, and whatever. It's out there. There are people that honestly I see it that do not take a really close look at where their money's at, and never open their statements sometimes till 10 years till retirement.
And sometimes not opening statements is a good thing. But at the same time, ignorance is not bliss. I would say during rocky periods, especially depending on your age, if you're up to age 55, fine, don't open your statements. Just, in a way, up to age 55, set it and forget it. Once you turn 55, you better start paying attention to where you're at. Not that there's a specific age, but if you're going to be set it and forget it until 55, and then you better start doing annual checkups at least, and just getting and shopping for opinions. You mentioned a question there, Kurt, and it reminded me of Dr. Guy Baker's 3 questions that no one else can answer. And so these are great questions that we know how to answer, but that doesn't mean that the public necessarily knows. So the first question is, how much capital do you need at retirement? So how much money do you need? And of course, that's going to depend on how much income you want your capital to generate. The second question is, how much more do you need to save to reach that capital amount? And of course, that's going to depend on where you're saving it at. The third question is, do you have an investment methodology for the greatest success with the least amount of risk? Those are the 3 questions. not only do we know how to answer those questions, we can help you leverage those questions to help you create even more opportunities. So those are the three questions that really need to be asked. And here's the neat thing: the sooner we start asking those questions, the sooner we begin trying to take a proactive approach, the better off you're going to be. That's one of the reasons why I left the credit union, because it was pretty good money, and I could have taken over like a 5 branch territory and such. But the thing is that I'm like, I want to work with people before they get to that point, because by the time they got to that point, they weren't doing any proactive planning. They just said, "Here's my buyout. Should I do this?" It's in a way kind of too late, and in a way we're saying, well, in a way you probably should. It's kind of a good deal. Question is, should you? And we try to help people work that out. And of course, we want to win that business. We get paid as people bring their money in, and so of course we have our bias. I'm not going to call it a conflict of interest, but we do have our bias that we, of course, and this is what I put in some of my marketing materials, which is, we want your money here. We just happen to call it planning. The question then becomes, but should you? And some people, they really shouldn't. And other people, it's like, you know what? You're ready. Despite not having done any planning, you've done pretty well, going into, middle management and getting your 401k matches and your pension plans and all those things. And of course, we want to win that business.
Yeah. And I think that what you just said goes to any sort of financial planning. Some people should and some people shouldn't do that specific type of financial planning. So whether it's our strategy or a different strategy or anything, that might work for some people and it might not work for somebody else. If you're 60 years old and you don't have anything saved for retirement, the strategy that we promote honestly won't work for you. That's just not, it's not going to happen. You might as well dump everything you have into some kind of index and, pray to God that it goes to the moon. That's probably your best shot. But, if you have some savings or you're younger and you want to use our strategy to do other things with, then that's a different ballgame. But yeah, I mean, there's no one thing that fits everybody. It really depends on a lot of variables, where you're at, what your, risk tolerances, how your age. There's so many different things that go into whether any strategy, no matter what it is good for somebody or not.
Yeah. What's interesting about our strategy is that there's no perfect time to do it. What we find out is that actually the older you get, the more assets you have, and the older you get, as long as we can qualify, it can work very, very well.
Well, yeah, the better it is, actually.
Yeah, the better it seems to be. You started off in your 20s, and it's kind of slow growth, a little extra slow actually at the time. But the older you get, the better it seems to be. So it's kind of the opposite. The only of what we think of normal planning is, I mean, one of the things I teach in objection handling, because I'm going to be doing a presentation for NAFA, that's one of our national associations, and I'm going to talk about the 7 greatest lessons I've learned in offering life insurance. And one of the things is how do you handle objections is, first of all, you never want to belittle the other person. And sometimes we have sales training that belittles people. Like, how could you even say that kind of thing? You belittle someone, they're not going to work with you as an advisor. If they happen to concede and actually meet with you, it's kind of reluctant, and you're not going to win them over as for an advisory relationship. But one of the things that some people say is, I'm just too busy. And I completely get, I have a very busy personal life myself. But if I may, the people I meet in their 70s wish they met me in their 50s. The people I meet in their 60s wish they met me in their 40s. Back when we had more opportunities, if possible. So time might be a factor, but then so is our health and so is our current cash flow to see if we can take advantage of opportunities the younger we are.
Well, and you make a point about something there, Mike, too, about, the better our strategy is, kind of the older you are. I'm kind of comparing apples to oranges here a little bit, I know, but, for those that still have defined pension benefit plans out there, there's still some out there. In my area, there's a really good one at an employer. And, you get the 3% or whatever that the company puts in on that defined benefit plan. Well, you get so many credits as time, goes by of years of service and different things. And so many people are amazed at how the ramp up or the explosion of what that defined benefit is at, say, from age 62 to 67. and it's the vesting
Yeah.
period and the different things that go into play there. But it kind of works the same way with our strategy. Yeah, it's not the greatest thing. It's really good, but it's not the greatest thing until you get to that sweet spot that's out there, and that's that 55. I'm thinking 58 age range, somewhere around there. That's really an optimal period to make this strategy work. And if you're in a situation where you've got 401k funds that have come available from changing a job or maybe a contract change somewhere that requires new paperwork to roll that over, before you roll that over, think about ways that you might be able to create that tax exempt silo or bucket of money where it was once taxed, and get it out of that tax bucket and get it into that never tax bucket, so that 10 years out from 55 to 65, you're going to have a bucket of tax exempt cash flow that was potentially going to be subject to a tax that can't even calculate what the rate's going to be.
That's a big key, big key. So I'm going to share a couple more slides here. The first one here, and I've shared this before, the impact of losses. And back when we were thinking about ebb and flow, negative 10%, it's not that big of a deal. And the reason it's not that big of a deal is because if you have a loss of 10% in a year, all you need is 11% to move back up to get back to where you were. Now, that's not gaining over what you should have earned. It's just getting back to recapture the loss. But the deeper the loss, the higher the return is. Now, again, 2008, we had negative 50%. You need 100% to get back to where you were. And how long is it going to take to get back to where we were? It takes a whole lot longer. That's not going to happen in a year. And it didn't. So I'm going to take that one off. I'm going to put this slide up because this one was such an eye-opener. And someone else created this. This is on Google, wherever it's at. And this is an S&P 500 index. This is out of a JP Morgan slide deck. But here from 97, whatever month it started at, through 2000, it grew 106% over like 3 years. It fell 49. But notice the negative 49 equaled the gain of 100. And then it grew over the next few years through, and I've got this thing in the middle saying slide 15. I wish that would go away. But up to the top of 2008, I think it is, here's 101%. Then it fell down. Whoop, go back. Then it fell 57%. Again, back to where it was. And then this grew, and this only through 2015, it grew 184%. And of course, it kept growing and such. Where are we at now on the? I know the Dow is what, 35,
we're like 39.7. It's like 39.7 today.
Wow. Now,
well, this doesn't take into account, the correction that we had a couple of years ago either. But yeah, it has.
Right.
And there's been slight corrections here and there in between this. But yes, overall over the last 15, 20 years. Or what have you, it has, generally speaking, continued to go on an upward trend. And that's kind of what
upward is great for as long as it stays upward. And what we've been seeing lately, and I just did a thing yesterday regarding the inverted yield curve. And what is an inverted yield curve? And I'll just try to visually explain that. Is that a normal interest rate curve, especially in bonds? The longer you promise the money to be kept, the higher your interest rate is going to be. Right now, it's inverted. The shorter you promise it, the higher the interest rate is. The longer you have it, the lower it is. What is that trying to tell us? It says we want short-term money. We'll reward you for your short-term money. Long-term, we don't want it. And why is that? And the last time that really happened was right at 2007, 2008.
And that's
this an indication of things going to happen. And I'm not one to predict doom and gloom, but I'd rather help people reposition so that they could take advantage of bad news rather than being a victim of it. I don't want to see people be a victim of their financial planning. I want to see people be able to take legal, ethical advantage of things that happen in the marketplace.
Well, it's funny you talk about 2008 a little bit. It just kind of jogged my memory a little bit about something. I actually had a client in 2008, that had a little over 700,000 in a 401k in 2008. Yeah. Okay. The market did what it did, and it was basically free falling with no way to stop it, pretty much. And
Right.
he took a 700K 401k balance and lost $214,000. Okay. I don't remember the age of the gentleman exactly in 2008, but in order for him to even catch up a little bit and recoup some of that money, he actually retired in 2021 with almost the same dollar amount that he had in 2008, simply because of the just the catastrophic, a $200,000 loss at, in your early 50s, and then 2021, 10 years later, 11, 12 years later, you don't do a whole lot better. It's just, and that's why I say time. And it's such an impact that people don't really think about. And if you're not actively and proactive about, where your money's at, it's not just costly. It can make you work the rest of your life when you didn't have to.
Yeah. Now, granted, I'm thinking about my brain's a human calculator, and I'm thinking, okay, he fell $200,000 from 700. I'm like, but was he contributing more over time? I mean, he must have adjusted his asset allocation within the plan to be very conservative, so he never lost another penny, which is probably why
Yeah,
he didn't
it's
participate
the
much in the gain.
Yeah,
Well,
it got into that fear thing again.
right.
That's when fear hit home right there. Fear hit home, for a lot of people right
when
there.
When you're that age and you see that kind of a loss, a $200,000 loss in your portfolio, you're going to be freaking scared out of your mind, right? I mean, you don't want that to happen again. So even if the market, the S&P index recovered faster than that, that doesn't mean that he's going to necessarily recover faster than that, because maybe he reallocated all his assets and never moved them because of being scared of it happening again. And
Exactly.
I can see that, as a person that's, close to or in retirement, if in a couple of years the market drops 30, 40%, I mean, and you lose close to, half of your portfolio, I mean, that'd be pretty, I don't know. I feel like most people would be pretty terrified and worried to put, all their money back into the same index, or, not a more, at least most of it into a more conservative, risk pool than it was in, and risk losing that again, because you never know.
Well, so many people that I was, communicating with, in 2008 were of the mindset of, oh, this is just a brief. This is just a brief little bump in the road that, it'll bounce back in a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. It didn't take but just there was anywhere from a 28 to a 35% drop in '08. Best I remember, it was somewhere, I mean, I'm talking about the bigger index, but still, that's where that's where everyone's money was at. It wasn't in, it wasn't in the single stock somewhere. It was a
It
broad.
was broadly diversified. So we're not talking about like an Enron or
Right.
where everything was in one company's stock kind of a thing. In fact, there are laws now that you cannot put more than 10% of your contributions into your employer's stock if there is stock for that company, or at least the employer match. I think there's laws on that.
Well, that's kind of 2008 was really, the turning point for me as to what I was looking to do with, people that wanted to talk about where to put their money. That's kind of what eye opened me with. It was an eye opener for me, was the strategy that's, it's been around for 110 years. It's been right under our nose. It's available to every single one of us. And that's why I'm so passionate really about, the traditional financial planning. It's an illusion, and it's a failure for the bulk of every American taxpayer. It's just not a benefit to you in any way, form, or fashion, other than the bigger benefit going to the institution or the firm that you're working with inside that portfolio of funds. There's a better way, and you need to do your research.
Absolutely. But I'm still stuck on thinking about your client here, because if it were me at that point, it's like, look, if he's going to delay retirement that long, because he delayed it from 2008 until finally 2021, that's what, 13 years?
Yeah.
That's a good period of time. I would have been saying, you know what, if you're going to be delaying retirement, you need to not retire your asset within the plan. You need to put that back in so that you can rebound. And eventually, let's just say based on age, Now, if he was, let's say he's 55 at the time, or
I'm pretty sure he was 55.
years.
Yeah, I think he was 55. Yeah.
Okay, so if he retired at 70, no, it would have been
67.
he would have been 68,
Yeah.
68, 69 or something. I'd say, look, once you turn, let's say the 5 to 7, maybe once you turn 59 and a half, then allocate it to be a safer allocation. And by the way, just for the disclaimer, this is not investment portfolio advice. I am not a registered rep or an investment advisor representative, but generally speaking, you don't want to sell out when the portfolio is so low, because you won't participate in the upside, assuming there is an upside.
And that's easy to say, right? But
I know.
There's people that are and some people might totally agree with you, and they're like, heck, now I'm going to go all in and I'm going to put it in some aggressive fund and I'm going to reallocate everything that way because the market just collapsed. Whereas other people, it's all about your mindset, right? So as other people might be like, you know what, the market just collapsed and I don't ever want to take this chance again. So I'm going to be as conservative as possible. And their mindset could always be in that fear mentality and mindset where they think that this is going to happen to them again. And so, some people might be like, hey, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to, go much riskier now and try to get all that money back. Whereas other people are going to be like, you know what, I don't ever want any more risk again. I can't take this. Just put me in as something as conservative as possible. So the advice that you're giving, Kinder, is right on. That's when you need to stay in and keep putting money into it. But, it just all depends on the person's mentality and how they feel. And sometimes even, you just can't talk people out of that. That's just, they get in that state where they're scared and, you can't talk them out of it. Like if you have something happens to you as a child or something, and so you're scared of it for the rest of your life. Some people, whether it's rational or not, right? Some people get
but I get that. For example, okay, little bit back when I was in the second grade, we were living in this house in Santa Ana, California, and we had this old little shack of a thing that was in the backyard. Now this was there before we bought the house; it was still there. And I looked over because I went on top to the roof of the thing, and I looked over, and I fell over. And I bumped my head and everything. Ever since then, I cannot get near a railing without saying I got to step back a little bit. It is with me for the rest of my life. I will not be able to shake it. I've tried, but I realized that's where it came from. Oh, well, that's where I'm at.
And no matter how much sense it makes, no matter how much people try to tell you that it'll be okay, to you in your mind, it does not compute. And
doesn't matter. Doesn't apply.
Right. And that's the same way for people that, when the market, go and you're about to retire, rolls back 30, 40, 50%, it might not matter what anybody tells them. They're going to be in that, state of fear and not ever be able to get out of it because they were, petrified by it. And it just, that's how they are. And that, I'm trying to find something to relate it to.
Well, and we're in a different space right now with the market too than I think, and we can get deep into this, but there's really no need to. But we're in a much different space and place with money in 2024 than say we were in 2008. And what I mean by that is, you've got an inflation factor right now that is crippling. It's crippling America. It doesn't matter what state you live in. It's worse in some than it is in others. And, you factor in the cost of living and, interest rates on homes now are doing what they're doing, but your guaranteed rates on money are, at 6+, if you're in the, certain products, and it's just a time where you should really take a hard look at raking some of your chips off the table, so to speak, and shoring up some of those accounts that you've got if you've got multiple accounts and look at getting the guarantee before these things are no longer available, because it's a balloon that's going to bust sooner or later, and it's just you're taking a huge gamble. And with the economy the way it is, we have too many factors out there. We've got just a handful of funds, I think, that are really driving the market at this point, and it's just an opportunity to to really take advantage of a unique situation and the rates that we do have that are on the guaranteed side. And our strategy that we preach so much about is going to deliver those 5 and 6% yields on where we're putting that. And it's just a way to retire with less money before you have less money to retire with.
And there is, I'm going to call it a legal cheat code on all this. If you're at least age 59 and a half, if you're at least age 59 and a half and you're still working, it is possible to do what is called an in-service distribution.
Yes.
And what that is that you can do an in-kind distribution. You roll out a good portion of your retirement funds, but you have to be at least age 59 and a half. But you can roll out a good portion of that to an IRA, and that could be an IRA at wherever you decide to have that. Of course, what we would probably recommend is we do an IRA annuity that would allow you to have principal protection with some indexed type growth. This is a fixed account, and then we can distribute some of those assets. Got to pay taxes on it, and then we can start funding the strategy over time. It's a strategy that can help you take control and be able to lock in the gains that you do have. Granted, you can't roll it all over. I think it's probably limited to like at the most 75% of your plan. I don't know. Every plan might be different, and not every employer will let you. But it's an opportunity that you can roll over a good portion of your funds, take control of it, and then start doing not just asset allocation or asset diversification, but also tax diversification as well. So that is a legal cheat code that not too many people really know about, but it's in most employer plans. So I want to make sure we got that out there. Reach out to us if you want more information on that. We can call your employer, HR, your 401k and pension custodians and see what's possible that could be done.
And the thing too about being proactive, a little bit is you're not going to get the person on the other end of the 1-800 number at Vanguard to tell you, what's best for you to do with 400 or 500K of money in a 401k, when the market is at a number right now I'm just blown away by where we're at in the market that we haven't already made, not a correction, but correction, not an adjustment, because I think it's my own personal opinion. I just think we are teetering on a catastrophic fall in the market. I think it's poised to do that.
Well, one of the things that I like about what we do is I don't have to pay that much attention to the market. The only two things I'm concerned about right now is the current presidential election, whichever way that's going to go, and who's counting the votes. That's going to be all very interesting to find out. And Mike, you're laughing here, but you're the one in Illinois, dude. Anyway, but it's not just the presidential election, but the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act ends at the end of next year. So it's not only who's going to be president, but who's president, and then are they going to be continuing that and renewing it for another 4 years, 8 years, whatever it is, or are they going to be making some changes? And the changes, who's going to be in the crosshairs? Let's call it if the Democratic side wins, whether it's Biden or whoever else they put in, they're still trying to make up their mind on that. Are they still going to keep the same state tax deduction as it's been now? So if right now, like in California, we have much higher state taxes, but we're capped to deduct against our federal taxes by $10,000. Everything above that, you're still paying your taxes. You can't deduct that against your federal taxes. Will that continue on? Or because if it's the blue side, the Democratic side, you would think that they would adjust that so that there would be a blue state tax relief kind of a thing. Because if it's Trump, I don't think he's just going to keep the current tax code going forward. So I could see either way. The question just becomes what is it going to be? And uncertainty brings uncertainty in the markets. It brings uncertainty in our planning. And the question is, can we turn that into opportunities for ourselves and opportunities for the clients to make sure that they can take advantage of uncertainty rather than being a victim of it? It's the biggest issue.
Recently, I was on another show that I was doing, and people like to accuse, certainly me, they did, or people like us in general, of fear mongering and things like that. I don't think that that's the case. I want Obviously, I hope that the market does well for everybody. I want everybody to do well with their assets. I think that the problem is that if you don't at least talk about the potential of both sides of it, that's the problem. I feel like it can be too much in one direction or the other, where you have your typical financial advisors are always promoting that the market is going to go up and it, always recovers and it always does this and that and over time and blah, blah, blah. And they make it sound
We're
like
sing Kumbaya for the rest of our retirement
right.
lives.
Yeah. And I think some people on our side are all doom and gloom. And I certainly don't want to, necessarily come off that way. But I do want people to at least be aware that there is a risk with these things, and that at least having a part of your financial strategy in, something like what we advocate for is probably at least sound financial planning. So that way you have both opportunities when the market is down, or you even actually have opportunities when things are going well, and you have other investment opportunities that you can access the collateral to use for. So it works both ways, but I do, I want to make sure that we don't just come off as, doomsdayers and doom and gloom type people, because that's not what it is either, because we want you to be able to take advantage of it both when the market is down and when things are going well also.
Well,
Yes.
and the thing also that, I stress with everyone I talk to about our, the strategy that we talk about so much is that 22% of our strategy is owned by the wealthiest 1% in the world or in the country. So if it's that good, they're not making these max contributions to qualified retirement plans. They're putting money in this circle that we talk about that where it's never taxed, and never taxed money is obviously going to spend a whole lot better than taxable money. And that gets into a conversation and probably a podcast that we'll have later on about, kind of teasing people with, places that rate of return doesn't have to be, 10 or 12% to net, X amount of dollars at a different, at a different rate. So it's just, I think it's fascinating to me that the truly wealthy, which kind of got me, really sparked about finding out more about how the tax code works, to find out that 22% of a strategy is owned by the wealthiest 1%. So they obviously know, they know something that really all of us, should be aware of, and it's available to us. We just have to get the word out.
Yeah, and Mike, I want to go back to the fear mongering thing, and I agree regarding fear mongering. I don't like fear mongering, and sometimes there's other people in our industry that do that. And the biggest one that I think of for fear mongering, especially with seniors, and I say that on purpose. And with fear mongering, they say the FDIC only has pennies on the dollar to cover your. I'm like, you know what? The FDIC is covered by the Federal Reserve, and they can print money. There's no problem there. So that's fear mongering. There's certain things that are designed to elicit things that are just not true. They're just expanding on some statistic to create fear. That's fear mongering. What we're talking about is real. Mm-hmm. If we keep it to the reality, it's not fear mongering. It's more or less news reporting, quite frankly. We're going to report to you the news. You decide what you think of it. If you think it's fear mongering, you're probably in denial, and you might be a victim of not taking action. But that's on you. I don't take responsibility for that. So, for example, I'm going to bring this up real quick. There's the U.S. debt clock. Right. Is this fear mongering? $34.8 trillion of national debt. Now, what was it? Back in 2020, the last election year, it was 28. We're up $10 trillion in 4 years? Hello, we got a problem. And that's not fear mongering. That's the truth. And if you're afraid of the truth, I probably can't help you.
Right.
Well, and it kind of goes back to our three questions. Do you want to retire? You want to in the same lifestyle? Do you want to make more money? And do you think taxes are going up? If your answer is yes to all those things, then we can help you mitigate any issue you've got, financially with your retirement plans, and take those retiree fears and those, pre-retiree fears, we can take that off the table, and it just becomes a matter then of executing a strategy, following through with it, keeping up to date on any changes that take place, because we all know life happens. It's you're not gonna fly through 10 or 15, 20 years of working toward retirement without a bump or two in the road, or even worse. And if we can answer those three questions and show you a strategy that takes a lot of that fear out, then I think you should at least, like you said earlier, Mike, you should at least take a look at where you're at, and if it makes sense to you.
Agreed. So we're probably going to wrap it up here, but yeah, next time let's talk about those three questions, and then the other three questions I mentioned earlier. We'll do some math on some of this, and let's see which strategies are easier to obtain, and then which strategies will position you to take advantage of other opportunities or make you a victim. We should talk about that next week.
Sounds good.
So, gentlemen, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Make it a great day. Please be sure to hit like, share, subscribe. Do the things. We'll catch you next week.
All right.
See you then.
See you guys.
You guys.